All right, so we're gonna jump right in and do Colin's herd hierarchy. The audio is a little messed up. That's not on my end at all. So it's nothing to do with me. I guess that's just kind of how it was released with the herd. So just want to let you know beforehand. So when you hear it, because you hear it right away, and I just wanted to say like that's not me. So, but let's just jump right into it.
Number 10.
Well, the Seahawks are getting healthier on the defensive front. I had them upsetting Atlanta in Atlanta, and they looked the part. They have a top 10 scoring offense. When Geno Smith is comfortable, and Atlanta has no pass rush, with those receivers, he's dangerous. Number one passing offense in the NFL, but they're like one of the worst run offenses, despite the fact they have Kenneth Walker, who I think is a stud, had a great catch this weekend. But I think when they're healthy, I think they're a pretty tough out, and they can beat almost anybody. Seahawks at 10.
Number 9.
I don't know what I'm doing. Steelers. I mean, it's the Russell Wilson Steelers. They look good. I mean, they had outscored the Jets 24-0 in the second half. I'm sorry, that's impressive. The offense scored on all 4 of its drives in the second half. Remember, Russell Wilson was not terrible last year in Denver. The defense was. He had a 98 passer rating, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, and scrambled. I don't know what to do. I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl team, but I'm sorry that when they play at home, Russell Wilson doesn't turn it over, can be pretty good in the red zone, have a home run threat Pickens, a Super Bowl winning coach. Najee Harris I've liked for years. I'm going to put him at 9.
Number 8.
I think the Niners would beat him. Niners are all beat up, but I think we have to contextualize this. Yeah, they look bad. It was the Chiefs. The Chiefs' defense makes a lot of people look bad. I mean, Baltimore looks amazing against everybody except, the Chiefs. So they're all beat up, but I will say they're bad in the red zone, and it makes me believe Brock Purdy is finally, take a deep breath, finally, last 12 starts, he's 6-6. It's very obvious that not only Purdy, but Kyle Shanahan is very dependent on Christian McCaffrey, who they say is coming back November 10th.
Number 7.
The Bills. So they have a losing record against winning teams, but they're the Mike Tyson. They can't beat Lennox Lewis or Holyfield in this prime, but they can beat the bad fighters. And that's Buffalo. I don't trust them against Kansas City or Baltimore. I wouldn't trust them against the Detroit. But they play downhill. And I do think Amari Cooper, who had a touchdown in his first game with the Bills, I think he's a nice, solid, good route running, mature, high IQ, veteran target. I think he makes them a better football team. And if they stay healthy, it's James Cook, it's Kincaid, it's Dawson Knox, it's Josh Allen, it's an all-pro left tackle. It is a formidable offense. I just don't trust them against the better teams.
Number 6.
The Commanders. Jaden Daniels is hurt. But, folks, they've scored on 64% of their drives. Well, what do you want me to do? You keep telling me it's just a mirage. I watched them play Baltimore. They looked like they could play. They went Baltimore and Washington. That was a good football game. Their defense, I keep hearing about all the flaws. But if Jaden Daniels is playing, this is a top 10 football team. I like the coach. I like the coordinator. I like the new owner. I don't know. I watch them play, and I think they're for real. I have Washington at 6.
Number 5.
Green Bay Packers. You know what I love about this? Is that watch Matt LaFleur coach Jordan Love. You ever notice this? He doesn't care about his mistakes. He knows he's got Brett Favre, but that kind of player. He lets him go. They lead the NFL with 8 touchdown throws of 10 yards plus downfield. This is a very dangerous team. I feel like they're Houston. They're about a year away from winning a Super Bowl. I would not want to face Green Bay in the playoffs, especially if they're on a fast track. Get them out of the cold weather in January. Get them to a dome in Minnesota. No, thank you. Big play offense. Taking the ball away. I don't know. I think this team's got Super Bowls in it. I'm just not sure if it's this year.
Number 4.
The Vikings. They just can't beat Detroit. Last 2 years, they're 0-2 against Detroit. They're beating everybody else. They've led by 10-plus points in every game. I think Sam Darnold, we all thought he's reckless. I don't trust him. You know what? I watched that Detroit game, that throw to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I think they're fine. The upcoming schedule, by the way, looks pretty easy. Rams game Thursday is kind of tough because teams that play the Lions the next week don't do well. But I got to tell you something. If this team ended up in the NFC Championship, I would not be shocked.
Number 3.
Well, I had Detroit as the second-best team in the league until I watched Baltimore last night. I think Detroit goes to number 3. They have more offensive touchdowns, 18, than incompletions over the last 4 games. Jared Goff is playing pass and catch. It looks easy. Jared Goff comfortable is really good. He's not going to move around, but Jared Goff in a pocket with a run game and a great left and right tackle is really a tough out. Aiden Hutchinson's loss will obviously be a huge factor. I still think they can make a move before the trade deadline. This is a really good offense, a deep threat, running game, tight end, accurate quarterback, dominating offensive line, clever play caller. This defense worries me. Offense is outstanding.
Number 2.
The Ravens, 9.4 yards of play last night. Lamar Jackson's insane. I love him. Everything about him. He leads the NFL in passer rating. For years and years when Lamar was doing all his tricks, he didn't have really good receivers. He had Mark Andrews. Well, now they got Zay Flowers. Now they got guys on the outside to help him. And Derrick Henry, who the Cowboys could have embraced. So there's, I think their pass defense terrifies me in a big game against like Kansas City. And I think that's the liability here is the back end. But the front end of the car looks the part. That team, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, they should go for it. They should go for every 4th down and short yardage with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Number 2, the Ravens.
Number 1.
Listen, they've made a lot of money beating the Niners and the Ravens and the Bills. And that's what I say. Kansas City is better than the rest of the league by a larger gap than you think. They have owned 3 teams that are a nightmare for everybody else. The Ravens, the Niners, and sometimes the Bills. I mean, that's the difference.
No, it's not. That's not the difference because those 3 teams that you just said this year were not the same at all. So no, that's really not the difference. Of course, it's so hard to get it where it's all top 10 teams. We ran into this. There we go. We got it. Okay. I do not watch that Ravens game yesterday and think that the Ravens are going to be owned by the Chiefs or that the Chiefs are light years better than them. The 49ers were decimated with injuries, okay? And the 49ers have not been playing great. They lost to the Rams, okay? They lost to the Cardinals, okay? So let's not act like the 49ers have been on one because they just haven't been. So the Chiefs beating them while Patrick Mahomes has his worst game of his NFL career versus not a great defense for the 49ers does not make them leaps and bounds better, okay? It just doesn't. I'm putting the Ravens, the Lions, and the Vikings all ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. I used to kind of tiptoe around it because I do believe in Patrick Mahomes. I do believe in Andy Reid. I do believe in Spags. But at this point, I'm not. I'm picking the Ravens, the Lions, and the Vikings over the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are better teams than the Chiefs. The Chiefs are not good this year. I understand their record. Who did they beat? I've talked about this at length today. They beat the Bengals. They're not up there. They have a losing record. They beat the Saints. They have a losing record. They beat the 49ers. 49ers have a losing record and are hilariously injured at this point, okay? They beat the Chargers, also injured, right? Justin Herbert was coming back after leaving the game early against the Steelers, right? And that was still a close game somehow. And they beat the Falcons, who were missing multiple starters, starting O-line, and, have not really proved to be this top grade team either. And then you have, they beat the Ravens, which week 3 onward, the Ravens have looked significantly better, right? The week 1 and 2, they did not look great. They were figuring it out. They figured it out. So no, I mean, it's just kind of absurd at this point. It really, really is. I think the Commanders definitely deserve to still be there. The Bills, it's going to be interesting to see what the Bills look like with Amari Cooper. I'm more conflicted more than anything about the Seahawks and the Steelers, right? We got to see how Russell Wilson continues with this team, with this offense. I think the defense is pretty good, but for the Steelers, I don't know if it's like this top next level elite defense like we see some of these other teams, but still obviously formidable. But so much of it, this team is going to come down to, can Russell Wilson get this offense going? And the Seahawks are just a very interesting team because they've also beat not so many great teams as well. And then they lost, they got beat pretty convincingly against better teams. So I don't really know what to do with the Seahawks just yet. The Seahawks are definitely, to me, way more of a wait and see. And in terms of trying to evaluate the 49ers, it's like the 49ers are so injured, right? They had no Debo, no Ayuk, no Christian McCaffrey, no Jennings. I mean, that's down 4 offensive starters just like that. I mean, what do you want the 49ers to be able to do at this point? So they got to get healthier more than anything. Again, the Buffalo Bills, they're continuing to grow and get better. They need to integrate Amari Cooper and kind of get that going. They're also dealing with some injuries as well. The Commanders are going to be interesting because of Jaden Daniels more than anything. He's week to week now with his ribs. So we'll see how he kind of progresses. But the Commanders are obviously great. They showed that even with the backup quarterback dominating the Carolina Panthers, right? So that goes a long way. And then you have the Green Bay Packers, who I think Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur are a top quarterback duo, quarterback duo. And then, of course, the Vikings. I think the Vikings are a top contender. I said this game, the Vikings versus the Lions, that was a Super Bowl matchup. I know it's the NFC North. I know they're in the same division, but that was the Super Bowl matchup, right? I mean, that was just two teams that were just fighting to the very end. Both had leads, both had momentum, both ripped it back. I mean, that was one of the best games I've seen in a really, really long time. So again, I don't see those two teams duke it out and both survive for the most part. And I'm just going to now put the Chiefs ahead of that, right? Because they beat the Saints, okay, without Derek Carr even being able to last the whole game. And they beat the 49ers, who were down to their 4, 5, 6, 7 wide receiver, right? And their third string kicker. I'm just like, I mean, like, come on, what are we talking about here? Just kind of absurd at this point. But yeah, I think this is, you know, again, it's not the worst thing. Because Colin said at the beginning of the clip that it's like a confusing herd hierarchy, a confusing top 10. And I think that's fair because I think this season is so messy. So messy. Last year, it was very obvious who these top teams were, right? It was very obvious and very clear. This year, it's kind of a mess. It is. Because I think so many of these teams, like I am intimidated by the Kansas City Chiefs defense, but their offense is insane. Patrick Mahomes is playing awful. I mean, he had his worst career game, and they're decimated with injuries as well now, right? I mean, so it's just like you can't even 100% blame the Chiefs for that. So the fact that they've been able to win, and they're going to continue to get wins because they're going to be playing the Bucs soon. The Bucs now have injuries, like so they're going to be able to get wins, and they're going to be able to look more dominant. But I think it's more fool's gold than anything, unless they can get healthy as the season goes on. Right, the Ravens look ferocious right now, but they did lose to the Chiefs week 1. But I stand by it that they weren't fully who they were right now. I mean, the Lions, look what they're doing, and the Lions lost to the Bucs. That was not a pretty game at all, by no stretch of the imagination. The Vikings finally got their first loss, and it was against potentially a Super Bowl winner in the Detroit Lions. And the Vikings were right there. They were right in that game. They had that game won as well. So many of these teams are so close. So Colin is very confident in saying that the Chiefs are significantly better than most people believe. They're significantly probably better coached than any of these other teams. That I really agree with. But in terms of how their quarterbacks have been playing, and how their offenses have been playing, and how they're just been able to play complementary football, I would not say that. And I would say that the Ravens and the Lions and the Vikings and you know, maybe a couple other teams, they're all within range of one another, right? If you're a Lions fan, maybe if you're a super confident Lions fan, you're not going to say, oh, the Lions play the Vikings again, they got that game won. And if you're a Vikings fan, you're not going to be like, oh, we play the Lions, we're definitely going to lose that game. You're like, no, we play them again, we're going to win. I have no idea who beats the Ravens versus the Lions, the Ravens versus the Vikings. I got zero idea, truly. I got zero idea. I think the Packers are going to continue to progress and get better. They have to. They're not where they want to be right now. They got to play cleaner ball. They were able to win the game against the Texans, who are not even on this top 10 right now. And you know, Jordan Love had 3 interceptions or 2 interceptions. Maybe it was 2 interceptions and a turnover from somewhere else, I forget, but I think it was 3 turnovers total. Right? That's not a clean game, and yet they were still able to win. But it was a close game, even though they forced C.J. Stroud to have 86 yards and a 58 rating and 0 touchdowns, and yet it still came down to a last-minute field goal, right? So that was like a very bizarre game, quite frankly. But again, I think the Packers are a top team. It was so fascinating to see the Commanders just roll the Panthers with Marcus Mariota, right? I mean, like that's kind of insane. So such a wild season, man. I mean, it is. This season has just it's just been crazy. It really has. Would you tell me that Patrick Mahomes is having his worst season of his entire career, and he's playing awful, has more interceptions than touchdowns, and yet you're going to tell me that the Chiefs are undefeated, right? If you told me, oh, the 49ers, they're going to have so many injuries. It's not even, their healthiest wide receiver is the guy who didn't even get to start the season because he was mugged and hurt, in the streets of San Francisco. Would you say that, I wouldn't believe that. Would you tell me that the Ravens are rolling teams now, dominating, that Derrick Henry is playing like he's a 24-year-old, pure prime, unstoppable beast of an animal, right? I mean, it's just the season's been wild. The Vikings have been wild. The Commanders, wild. It's been a wild season. There's no other way to put it, quite frankly. It's been a wild season. It's been awesome. I've honestly loved every single moment of it. I feel like if you're a die-hard fan of an individual team, I don't know how you guys can handle this. I look at things from a more, top-down perspective, right? From a more like stepping back perspective. So I'm looking at all these games and all these teams, and I'm just like, this is a mess. How do I make sense of all of this? But if you're like looking at it just through the lens of a Lions fan or Vikings fan or a Ravens fan, on one side I kind of envy you because it's so much more singular and you can be a little bit more focused. On the other side, I'm like, I don't know if you have a clear understanding of what this season looks like right now because it's just wild to me. I mean, Lamar Jackson's just been dominant right now, and Jared Goff has been just been owning teams. I mean, his numbers are just through the roof. Sam Darnold is playing like a star. Sam Darnold was not the weak point for the Minnesota Vikings against the Lions. So it's just crazy. It really, really is. You have the Seattle Seahawks and the Steelers in, but not the Houston Texans, right? Like, it's just, whew, wild. I probably said that realistically like 30 times this video, and it's true. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Colin Cowherd's herd hierarchy? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.